It's Electric Drives. Your electric vehicle future starts right now. Welcome to the show. I'm Anthony Algmin, and I'm joined by my co-host, Bob Reese. We created this show to make it easier for others looking to move to electric vehicles, and that's more and more people every day. We are out there using EVs in normal commutes and road trips, and we'll share the wisdom we've gained from living our lives with electric vehicles. You can join in the conversation by sending your questions and topic ideas to questions@electricdrives.us, by joining the Electric Drives Facebook group, and by becoming a patron at patreon.com/electric drives to get exclusive content and help support the show. Bob, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. It's been a long couple days here.
Well, I just have to say, like, when we're recording this, a week ago, it was 75 degrees. Today,
yes.
It's in the 20s. It's been snowing for 2 days. It's just it's the seasons, they have changed. And I feel very proud that I used that warm Thursday to switch into my winter tires and get all of that, which worked perfectly. I had exactly the equipment I needed, no more, no less. I had the tires and everything have been perfect. I've been driving it. I've driven to work a couple times on the new ones. They're fantastic. I really can't speak highly enough about Tire Rack and ordering my winter wheel and tire package from them with the exorbitantly overpriced Tesla Bluetooth sensors, which are $120 per wheel now.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but in the end, it was really easy. And I'll give the Tesla a bit of credit as well, because it picked up the new wheels with basically no effort on my part whatsoever. I just kind of said, got new wheels, got new tires, or basically new tires, got my winter tires on, here you go. And, drove, down the block, and it was fine. It knew my new tire pressures. It knew everything. So it was super, super simple as far as bolting on new wheels and tires. Can't speak highly enough about it, and everything went well with that. And I'm thrilled how it looks. I'm thrilled how it drives. And, 4-wheel drive with winter tires, with snow tires, you are in the absolute best performing situation out in these roads. And so you really have a lot of confidence driving around in these slippery conditions. So I'm happy about all of that. Not really happy about the weather, but it's been a good experience with the first time I've had an electric vehicle with snow tires. No, we haven't had like sticking snow yet, so I haven't really tested the real performance of that. But so far, so good in the cold weather. It's been great.
So you input what tires you put on the car so that it knows that, hey, this is a different diameter. And so there's a difference in revolutions per mile.
Well, there really isn't much of a difference. It's very, very similar in terms of the overall diameter of the wheel plus tire. The difference is, so my car comes with a 20-inch wheel standard with very low profile tires. So with the winter tires, or winter wheels and tires, I went with a 19-inch, but the wheel is smaller, but the tires have a bigger sidewall. And so the overall diameter of the wheels within 1% or 2% of the overall that it normally is. And so it doesn't really need to know anything different about the overall diameter of the wheel, but it does give you a selection, at least in the Tesla, it gives you a selection of, I'm running winter tires now. Be aware that I've swapped those out. And then it recalculates, I think, and is starting to relearn. So it kind of refreshed how it's going to predict what my mileage or what my range is going to be, and the efficiency and all of that. And it'll let me select what it looks like a little bit, which I don't think it really is doing anything, because it, like, do you have the 19-inch sport wheels, or do you have the 20-inch Uber turbines? And I'm like, I don't really have any of those. I just bought some aftermarket wheels. It didn't have a selection for, like, I bought the cheapest stuff I could find. But I just picked ones that were 19-inch and like 19-inch sport wheels of some sort. And I'm like, close enough. And in the end, it really doesn't matter, because as long as it picks up the tire pressures, and it knows, I mean, presumably it knows that I'm running snow tires for a reason. So maybe it's going to adjust how it lays down traction or something. I'm not sure. But in the end, it's smarter than I am when it comes to that stuff. I did what I could to tell it, but I was really impressed that it wasn't finicky. Like, a lot of these cars are going to be finicky to pick up the new Bluetooth sensors on the new wheels.
Right.
And it's, it was no problem at all. It really was this as simple as anything I've done. So yeah, good experience from that perspective. We'll see how the winter goes, and I think it'll be a wise investment, especially given that I put a lot of miles on my car. And I mean, when I left work yesterday, there was 2 days ago, there was 3 inches of snow on my car, like up
Mm.
north. We got a ton of snow, but then by the time I drove home, there was nothing sticking to the ground at all. I'm like, well, glad I don't have to clear the driveway, but man, there was a lot of snow on my car. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
anyway, you've been on the road a lot this week, and I know you're pretty far away from home right now. Tell us about your adventures, and I know we've got some interesting charging circumstances that you found yourself in this week as well.
Yeah. Starting last week, I went to Iowa, and I came home early on Thursday so that I was at a Veterans Day performance on Friday. Monday of this week, I drove 350 miles. I had to go to a couple customers that were trying to finish off their paperwork on some construction projects. I got tied up with the projects, so when I got home from my drive to Peoria, don't forget, I do not have a 220 charger for my house. I just have a 110 wall outlet charger. So my charging is rather limited. I got as much as I could, but then I needed to get home. So Tuesday I started with 80% battery. And Tuesday I had a 450-mile drive because I drove from Chicago to Davenport, Iowa, and to Green Bay.
Oh wow!
Which is a triangle, but I took the two long sides of the triangle.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing I found is the temperature was 30 degrees, but because I was doing a lot of highway driving, I was keeping the battery warm. So my charging rate was actually summer-like. I was charging about half the time that the gasometer was telling me I'd be spending at each stop because everything was nice and warm. So the battery was able to take on the electrons and keep on going. So it was like I was doing self preconditioning of the battery.
Yeah, it would be.
I got to a motel last night. I had gone to PlugShare when I picked out the motel, and I saw that the motel that I picked out had 648 amp chargers.
Wow.
Yes. They're like heavy duty getting ready for the onslaught of electric vehicles. And so I came into that location with under 30 miles range because I thought, well, I'll get a full charge overnight, 40 amps. That should be perfect overnight.
Yeah.
So I pull in. The first slot was a Lucid, real nice, expensive, huge battery car because that one's got like a 520-mile range. So it's quite a bit bigger battery than I have.
Yeah.
So I pulled into the next charger next to him. Then there was a blank charger. Then there was a Honda plug-in. And then there was a truck that shouldn't have been parked there at all, so that other people could use it. And then a Tesla Model Y that was charging. And I plugged in. Everything just seemed to be okay. Took my first load of stuff up to the room, came back down. Both the first 3 chargers were completely dead. The Lucid and my car, and then the blank one. The lights were off on all 3 chargers. So luckily I had done that because then I went in and said, hey, to the front desk, I said, hey, there's a problem here. And the gal at the front desk said, yeah. She said, for some reason, the Lucid, whenever it's on the charger, it blows the whole circuit if another car gets on it. So as I had told you in the text yesterday, it's like Lucid can't play with other people. It wants to be all by itself. So she reset the charger and she says, you better move so that she had the Honda, so she pulled off out of the charger, and I plugged in where she was at, and I was able to charge there. Except there was a fault with the charger. And found out why. When this morning I got up and checked, and I didn't get too much range. I only got about another 30 miles range. So I went to the front desk and asked, and the maintenance guy came down. He says, well, that's because everybody takes the charger, and instead of putting in the holster, they just let it dangle. And sometimes they dangle facing up, and sometimes they dangle facing down, or they'll leave them on the grass. So they get water in the contacts, and they have some issues with that, causing some failures. So I made sure the contacts were clean after he reset the circuit breaker, and then I was able to charge for a few hours. So I looked into why circuit breakers keep tripping, and it's usually short circuit faults in your electrical system. And it says one reason circuit breakers keep tripping is a short circuit within the electrical system. And that's something that the maintenance guy and I had a discussion about later on, because the breakers are located in the pool area. And so he's wondering if that's absolutely the worst place for them to be, because they may be getting some the fumes from the pool, the chlorine attacking it, and may be causing some corrosion. The second reason that circuit breakers keep tripping is an overloaded electrical circuit.
Yes.
And that would be a design issue. And your electrical system operates within specific parameters of voltage and current. Now, that one I sort of did not buy. I didn't agree with that one, because whoever set this up would have had the two circuits, 3 and 3, and they knew they had 40 amp chargers, so they should have probably put on, 3 times 40, that'd be 120 amps. So they should have put on probably 150, so that they had 80% with a 20% cushion.
Yeah.
But so that's a possibility, but I tend to think whoever did the wiring for that would have been a little smarter than that.
Yeah.
And then another one was a faulty circuit breaker. And there's been, I know my father he was an electrical engineer, and he always said, if a circuit breaker breaks and you reset it, it's going to fail again, because they start decreasing in the amount of current that they can take over a period of time.
Totally makes sense. Well, and two, what I wonder, so there's a couple hypotheses that I might have to add to this, right? I mean, maybe one to add actually, but it's so I would agree with you. Like, any self-respecting electrician is going to know, hey, you need to have these wired up with enough overhead to manage that continuous load. And that's really key, because these are substantial power draws. But you're talking, this is a commercial installation. There's, 6 chargers here. Clearly they're going to have to run a pretty heavy duty line, and it's that part I would agree with you. I think that they probably got it right with the minimum amperage that thing was set up at and could handle. So I do agree. It's probably a stretch. The other thing, though, that I have learned, especially because you're seeing these kind of faults get triggered and things go dark, I wonder what they're doing with the ground fault interruption stuff. The ground, because if you have too many of those, they get freaked out and they will start tripping a lot faster. This is what they say when you're installing your EVSE in your home, is that your charger unit, the EVSE unit itself, has built-in ground fault protection.
Correct.
So you do not want an additional one in line, because that will cause problems. They will interfere with each other, and they'll have a tendency to flip because of that. And so you have to be knowledgeable, and this is more of an electric vehicle thing, because it's uncommon for other electrical appliances to have that kind of interrupt built into the unit itself. Typically they wouldn't. Typically it'd be the plug that you're plugging into, but if you're hardwiring an EVSE, the electrician needs to know whether or not you have that. And if they're not super knowledgeable in the electric vehicle world, they may not know to ask that question. That just may be
Hmm.
something they would overlook. And so that could cause more problems. I'm interested in too, like where the circuit breakers are around the pool. I think that's interesting. But can we just blame Lucid? Like I want to blame Lucid for breaking everything. Like
Well,
the new upstart EV maker, they just somehow suck all the energy out of the AVSE and ruin it for everybody. Is that a possibility at all, or is it just like no, that's not what's going on?
well, it seems ironic because the gal at the front desk, since she's got the electric Honda,
Mm-hmm.
the plug-in hybrid, um, she said that there's a couple of Lucids that come into that particular motel.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, no matter what cars are on that same circuit, if the Lucid's on there and another car goes on it, the whole circuit blows.
Yeah.
The Lucids have to be by themselves, she says, which is really a pain when both the Lucids are there at the same time.
I mean, it's anecdotal evidence, but it's still evidence. It's still like, hey, it's the best explanation we've got right now. So I'm just excited that I've got a great episode title coming for this one. You know, Lucid Air. You know, Lucid destroys charging networks. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but it's going to be great. But yeah, it's hopefully not clickbaity, but like, it's an interesting thought that I haven't heard of before. Is a particular make a vehicle causing problems at charging that nobody else is causing. It's a new it's a new development that I hadn't heard before. So I think it's an interesting topic, and hopefully, you know, we won't hear more of this. Maybe it's a one-off thing, but it really, if they know it well enough to know, because there's not that many Lucids, like, and so they're if they're seeing that pattern that distinctly and it happens every time, something
Yeah.
wonky is going
Yep.
on with Lucid charging for sure.
Right, right. And because there was only two of us, the Lucid and myself, on that circuit, and yet it blew.
What kind of charging stations are these? What
Oh,
are they? First off, they're not Tesla destination chargers, I assume.
no, they are
They're
not.
not the Tesla connectors. So you're using their CCS, right?
Right,
Okay.
right. I took a picture of it. Hope I still have the picture. It's a Leviton. A Leviton.
Oh, yeah.
It's a yeah, it's a 40 amp, 208 to 240 volt. Can't tell what the date code is on it. It says 1850.
And there's 6 of them, or are there 3
Yeah,
of
they
them
got
with
6 of
double?
these.
6 of them. Okay. Interesting. Well, it's a fascinating story, but I think we're going to see more and more of these things. There's so many variables in getting these things going. I mean, I got to give the hotel a lot of credit for having 6. I've never seen a hotel that has 6 that they've put in on their own,
Right.
or what have you. And you're not talking. This isn't like downtown Chicago. This is a relatively you know, far away place in Wisconsin that has that, right? Like it's, you know, you're not in the major
It's
metropolitan
Appleton.
area.
It's
Yeah,
Appleton,
Appleton.
Wisconsin.
So yeah, so it's a really interesting story. So I want to ask you, while we have a minute or two left, I want to ask you, because Tesla was in the news recently around opening up their charging port standard. So the Tesla plug is much smaller, especially when you compare it to the DC
Right.
fast charging that you see from the
Right. Right.
CCS plugs. It's much smaller. It's relatively efficient. It can handle fairly high speeds, and it's you know, it's what Tesla has been using throughout, and so it's been widely adopted because there's still more Teslas on the road from an electric vehicle standpoint than everything else combined. What do you
Yeah.
think, Bob, as a person who drives a car that uses the CCS standard and all that? Would you be a game for moving towards a universal Tesla standard, which
Hmm.
they've now called like the North America charging standard? They're like, hey, it's open source, use it whatever you want. Yeah, I don't trust them completely, but I'm like, I like the Tesla. I've used cars with both. I like the Tesla Charger. It's easier to handle. It's lighter. The one thing that I come back to, I was talking with my wife about this, is that love or hate Tesla for whatever it is. I gotta say, it's a lot easier to like plug in your charger with a Tesla model charging port than it is the big DC
Right,
fast
right.
charging thing. Those cables are huge. They've got the liquid cooling, and if you're a small person, fortunately I'm not a smaller person, I'm pretty strong, I can manage it, but even for me it's kind of unwieldy at times. Like, you got to get the angle right and everything. It's like I would love to see it where anybody could reasonably plug in their car without too much hassle, and I think that may be a pretty big deal when it comes to that. So what are your thoughts? Like, is this something that you would like to see? Just let's get to a consistent singular standard, and should it be one or the other? What do you think?
Well, it's like the old beta versus VHS
Yeah.
type of thing too, where beta was actually the superior technology, but VHS was actually a lower cost machine, and it took over the marketplace, and you didn't see betas after a certain period of time.
Yeah.
I totally agree, and it's got to have, the Tesla's got to have cooling, but you're right. You can do it. You see people do it one-handed. You see kids plug them in and so on. It's really hard with the CCS you've got to pick it up with two hands.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you've got to bring in the top first, have it click, and then jockey it in.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a fluid motion. So if they can do it, hey, that'd be the way to go. And the kicker is there are adapters for going from Tesla to CCS.
Mm-hmm.
So they can go that way and get more of the marketplace. But if everybody goes to Tesla, that's fine too. Because look at the numbers. I mean, Tesla still sells over 80% of the electric vehicles.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I like that there's now availability for the adapters in both directions. Like, you can use a Tesla on CCS, you get that adapter, you can get the Tesla adapter for your CCS based car and charge it at Tesla destination chargers. I think it's right. I think doing this is I care much more that we get to a singular standard than I care which standard it is, though I kind of think the Tesla standard is superior from what I've seen, even though it brings up other questions because the global standard is CCS. And so, like, Teslas have those adapters when they're shipped to Europe. And so it's a lesser standard for a number of reasons. And so we may be better off from a usability standpoint and kind of being able to manage into the future. The Tesla standard may prove better, but I the one thing I will take a stand with is, like, I want one standard. I want everybody to use the same one. I don't care that much which it is. I can lean one way or another, but, like, to me, just like your point around VHS and beta, it's we got to get to a singular standard. It's just like unleaded gas. Like, we got to get to a singular standard. Like, even if you have a couple of different variations within that standard, fine. But, like, you can fill up any car with unleaded gas for the most part.
Right.
You've got your holdouts that still do diesel, regretting that right now. Those diesel prices are crazy. But regardless, yeah. So anyway, great conversation. Is really fascinating. That whole story around the Lucid, and the charging and how I'm really curious about why it might be, like, so consistent with the Lucids messing it up for everybody at those charging stations. So, anyway, I think that'll wrap it up for today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that YouTube bell icon. Please send your questions and topic suggestions to questions@electricdrives.us, and we'd love for you to join us on Facebook and Patreon. All the links are, of course, in the show notes. Thank you all for spending some time with us, and we wish you a smooth road ahead on your own electric drives.